Hello, guys. Welcome again to the program. I'm your host, Nino Sajirusu. Thank you all for tuning in. Again, if you like this channel and all the titles and the subjects that we do talk about, please subscribe someone with a button below. But other than that, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to just pop in. I really want to talk about the subject that has been quite a hot topic in our society regarding masculinity. Okay. When I mean masculinity, I mean what makes a man a real man? That's the question that many have. And that is a hot debate today because masculinity has been under crisis. And I do want to talk about it because I myself have been asking that very same question. I want to encourage, if you're a man, I really hope you can watch this and listen to it. I'm not an expert in any way, but I am a man, and I do thank God I'm a man. I I do know how it feels to try to figure out what a man is. I've been there and I'm still learning, and I've had some help, and I want to encourage you to listen to this as we talk about masculinity and manhood. My information, what I want to do first in this video, because I think we're going to do a series of videos, is really analyze the problem. I think that's the best thing to do. And then we'll go and see what I find as a Christian going to the Word of God. What does God really have to say about this whole situation? Men today, as I said, are trying to find out what a man is. And what is a man? That's a big question. What does it mean to be masculine is really the main question. How does one define uh, what a man is? And there have been many voices who try to answer this very question, right? And their attempt was to really solve the male crisis problem. Uh, one of which was the feminist movement. I want to talk to you first of all about how the feminist movement tried to fix this problem. So they claim that the traditional patriarchy is the root of for toxic masculinity, as we call it. It is sexist, it is oppressive, it is unequal, and so it is labeled as dangerous. And so they really claim that because over the centuries of our society, in our society through religion, our society has been influenced by this traditional view called the patriarchal view of manhood, and it has produced harm to women in society. And so they claim it is the reason why men become violent or abusive. And the solution they suggest that the solution is to try and promote through public demonstrations or rallies to abandon the traditional view of manhood, which was the patriarchy, and instead to embrace a new redefinition of manhood, which will agree with the feminist doctrine of man. How do they do that? There are a couple of changes they do. First, they change what marriage is. They changing the marriage roles between husband and wife. And then you got changing men's occupancy in the role of leadership and other vacancies. And they enforce men to become more vulnerable and embrace their feminine side. Now, this is what we see today in our television programs, right? I mean, you watch television, I assume, and you watch Amazon Prime or Netflix. How often have we noticed a policewoman taking the lead role in an action film, or in marriage, couples embrace equality in marriage where it's not just one who is the head of the home, but two, and two are the providers rather than one. Women being given higher positions politically and in the corporate leadership roles, men becoming stay-home dads, doing basically what a mother does, applying for nursing jobs or banking jobs, or sorry, baking jobs rather. They do baking. Then you got, and this has been a shock to me really, but I kind of cringe when I see it. Female WWF fighters and wrestlers, bodybuilders, rugby players, UFC fighters, soldiers, even as little as allowing their wife Given examples like allowing their wife or girlfriend to sit in the front of the car seat and just drive the car. You get my point. Our world has become female dominant. That's just a fact. Men have become silenced by being masculine, by the culture. That is a solution which the feminists have promoted over the past 5 decades. This is what Jack Myers from Times Magazine, he's an author, reporter. He wrote an interesting article in Time Magazine's after reading a book called The Future of Men. He proposes this idea, which I have just mentioned. I'm just going to quote him. This is what Jack Myers says. We have the window right now to redefine what a real man, is in the 21st century. As a society, we need to elevate the standards to which men are being held and no longer accept the outdated mantra that men will be men and boys will be boys. He carries on to say that we must have zero tolerance for the destructive brotherhood that occurs when men of all ages gather and depend on sexism, misogyny as their common bond. He also added, these are the tools of the patriarchy. They are the ritual of hazing that signify a boy's entry into manhood. They can be disregarded if we create a new narrative that welcomes young men into a truly gender equal society. End quote. So clearly, he's against the patriarchy, and men are left knowing nothing what a man is. And what he and the secular feminist movement really suggests to do is to make them not feel left out by redefining what a man is. The redefinition, that's the solution. The article goes on to warn, if we fail to focus on redefining men's roles alongside women's, we are in danger of fostering a culture of hostility among men who are feeling left out in schools, in jobs, and market, and in relationships. He's very sensitive to that factor. He says that these men will be less likely to accept gender equality, less likely to advocate advances for women, and less likely to foster healthy relationships and families. For the sake of a healthy society, this is what he says, and I noted down in italics, we need to redefine a positive and appropriate form of masculinity, end quote. What Times Magazine and many other advocates of the feminist equality movement don't realize is that leaving the patriarchal tradition also meant that men have been told by the secular culture to not settle for marriage. What am I saying? In other words, they have released them from becoming grown-ups. They've released them from becoming responsible men, abandoning marriage, going to have as much fun in the world, getting as much pleasure one could get. Basically, there are, and I've seen this, guys, and we've seen this. I'm talking to guys now. We have seen this. 40-year-old men who are really acting as boys. This is known as the Peter Pan syndrome, really. And the worst thing a culture can do to a man is to remove responsibility from him. Why? Because a man is defined by being responsible. Because it brings purpose. It brings life worth living. And so if a man does not see the point of learning at university or the purpose of being responsible at their workplace or planning a mature future, then they are going to go to the video games. They're going to go to the bars and get drunk and smashed and hangover. They're going to remain as boys, basically, because there is nothing worth living for. You're going to see a lot of depressed men, which is exactly what the statistics have been showing. Men inwardly desire to bear responsibility. And if the culture does not give them that, then they will conclude that they're not useful. to be responsible. They are no worth, basically. That's what they're going to conclude. Men have become sissified. Okay, they become feminine and weak than those of the previous centuries. Friends, you just simply have to compare the men of the previous 100 years or so with today's men, and you're going to unquestionably see the difference. Men back in the days of World War One were more ready to sacrifice. They were more responsible. They were given the lead and they were ready to sacrifice. They upheld a very good role of masculinity in the positive sense. But this is, friends, this is an attempt to transform men to what they're not by the culture around them, dictating to them what it thinks what a man is. We mustn't let that to happen. And I don't want that to happen. And it's wrong what they're doing to men, because here's the thing. Because once you gave man or men a false doctrine of man, they will do more harm than good, or become less motivated and end up going back to the same problems. So it doesn't fix the problem. It just does a U-turn back to the same problem. This simply is because of one very important factor. This is my strong argument here. It's simply because culture is ignoring how men are wired, and they are ignoring what God has to say about this matter. And this is why I want to do a Christian voice on manhood. The second voice says the problem with men is that they have not gone back to find what real manhood is. The Christian position is that there is only one, not the culture, not even men themselves. It's only one who has the right to define what a man ought to be and what a man is, and that is the Creator, God. That's right, God. You know, men are left confused. They are left insecure and lost in their identity, because although they desire to fit into the culture, they just over time they realize naturally, and I've had this as well, that that we're not okay following this. They see how disorganized their way of living is, and they are, and I have been aware of how slow men as general they grow up slow from becoming responsible. So there's a lack of maturity in men who, by continuing the path they are, find themselves more hurtful and deeply discouraged often. This is why statistics of the men becoming discouraged or depressed is growing. The feminists have some truth. I will grant that. They have some truth which we must consider, okay? And I agree that there have been men who have been misusing their manhood to take advantage and abuse women. That is true. It's biological, it's about just a biological fact that men are stronger physically than women. And they can take advantage of them and harm them in a horrific way. Men who are abusers, who beat their wives, who ruin relationships, who become dominated, who become dominant dictators rather than loving husbands, are not real men. I repeat, they are not real men. And yet, I don't agree with the feminist movement solution. I don't agree with that. Because I can turn their argument back to them and say, it is a fact that there are women abusers and racists as well. Should we then destroy the traditional view of womanhood? Should we then destroy the feminist movement altogether? Should I redefine what a woman is to make it fit into my own ideal society? You get my point. No. Should culture define what a woman is because it dictates how we should think? And the answer is absolutely not. The solution is not to destroy the whole patriarchal order of manhood, which, by the way, has just brought into existence Western civilization for thousands of years. But we need to get to the root of the problem. What is the root of the problem? Friends, these are men who have not been checked. What I mean is, in other words, these men have not been discipled. They've not been disciplined by mature, wise men, by wiser men who have a good standing and a good reputation. That's the problem. Where are these men of good standing, of good reputation, who are wise? Where are they? That's the problem. That's the problem. Because the facts and statistics show that most men who become abusers through alcohol or however way, through crimes, had either an absent father in the home or had a very bad male example at home or within the family or within friends, who equally have never been trained or discipled or loved by good, God-honoring, wise men. That's the problem. And here's why this is so important here. A lack of discipleship means not having a good male role model and not having a responsible father in the home, which is a result of women not being protected. And we see women who have become victims. That is exactly what we see in our society, right? When a boy grows up not having a good mentor or a good role model or a good responsible father, an unhelpful male role model, for instance, someone who never settles to get married, never keeps a job, abandons the marriage, and they separate with his wife and becoming a grown boy, basically playing the video games, getting as much pleasure in sex or any other from the opposite sex by whatever cost. That is the reason why it leaves women unprotected and victimized. That's the reason. It's because of these bad examples. Not only that, friends, but removing the way. So we got to think twice whether we really have to take the extreme and remove the patriarchy. Because by removing the patriarchy, which, by the way, God designed it for marriage, I mean, it actually leaves women in a dangerous position. Have you ever thought of that? Now, let me give you an example from just a life lesson. Parents, you would know this. You have taught your children to know what are the boundaries, right? Look, if you're a parent and you just allow your children to do anything and anywhere and go anywhere, you're a bad parent. I'm telling you, you're a bad parent. You think you're protecting them, but you're not. What a child knows, when a child knows how far it ought to go, or how much is allowed and what is not allowed, they feel safe. Come on, truth be said, they feel safe because there are boundaries protecting them. But if you remove those boundaries, they not only bring chaos and do whatever they feel they want to do, they become insecure. And naturally so. Everyone else around them feels exactly the same, you know? And marriage is one of those boundaries God puts. So real manhood, real godly patriarchy is what God made men to be. Godly from real manhood. Removing marriage roles defined by God, it leaves women in danger, becoming hurt and abused by immature, undisciplined men. I don't think we want that. And you don't want that. So it's actually ironic The feminists want women to feel secure and safe, and yet they advocate to completely remove the traditional view of marriage for the sake of safety, which, by the way, is far from the truth. On the contrary, it leaves both actually, men and women in danger. Friends, if you have come thus far listening to this video, I want you to stay tuned for the next video, which will be the biblical response. So, what does the Bible have to say about the male crisis, and what is really the solution that the feminists have and our secular culture have missed out? Okay, I want to say thank you for this time, for tuning in. Hope to see you again. God bless. Bye bye. Bye bye, guys.